Well, when I left boot camp, I was sent down to Norfolk, Virginia, and I wound up in navigation, which I really loved at the beginning. I thought I was going to be really into navigation at that time. But the only part about it is when you first get aboard ship, you're down really on the bottom of the totem pole. Most of our jobs were standing watch with somebody. Anybody wanted coffee, like the captain or the officer on deck or whoever was up in the Yelp 4 level, we would have to get them coffee, because I know a lot of times we would always have coffee up for them. And another thing, we used to have to do a lot of scrubbing, a lot of painting, and a lot of chipping at that time. Eventually, I got to work myself up as I got rated. I got from seaman apprentice, and I went to seaman. After that, things got a little better, but we still had to stand our daily watches of 4 hours on, 8 hours off. Most of the time, it was at sea, or in import. When we were in port, a lot of times we would have to stand 4 on and 8 off again. And a lot of times we would double our shift, stand on 8 hours and 8 hours off, because everybody wanted their liberty at that time. As we progressed, I learned how to I became a helmsman by steering first when we were at sea. That's where I got my first experience from. Then I used to have to go steer again. Sometimes at night, we would have courses down in after steering, which they would shift the control down to us. That was another place there where we would have to steer from. Now, most of the times after that, it was, like I said, on duty at 4 hours on and 8 hours off.
Could you explain what is after steering? Where is that located, and why do you have an after steering compartment on the ship?
Well, in case something ever happened to us, if we ever got hit on the 04 level, which we couldn't get to the 08 level, we would shift steering down to after steering, which was in the after part of the ship.
And was the setup down the after steering the same as the setup up on the bridge, or was it different?
The only thing different was that we did not control the RPMs, like if it was full speed ahead, back speed ahead, all engines ahead 1/3 or 1/2. The only thing we couldn't control was that, but we had controlled everything else about that.
How long? So you had on-the-job training to become a helmsman. There was no schooling that you went to at the time. Is that correct?
No schooling at all.
Yeah,
you had to learn by yourself.
How were you picked to be a helmsman? Was everybody in your division allowed to do the helmsman work, or just several people?
No, certain people didn't want it. But I figured, let me try it. And I tried it, and I liked it. The only bad thing about it is that you can really never go off course with that, because a lot of times if you're alongside a ship, or if you were doing a highline transfer, or going into port, or if you're replenishing our ship, or if we had very, very bad seas, we would be asked to take over the helm.
What was it like to be steering a battleship? At age, how old were you when you were
Actually, I was only about 22 years old, and I was thinking about how would it be to steer one of these. I says, well, like I said, let me give it a shot. So I did. I enjoyed it, and I was pretty good at it for a while.
What made you good at it? Why
Well,
were you good?
for one thing, I got along good with the officers on deck at that time, because I very seldom went off course. Most of the times, if I went off course 1 or 2 degrees, they would, they wouldn't holler, but they would tell me I'm off. So from that time on, I really kept my eyes on the compass at that time.
Is it hard to steer a battleship?
No, it's not hard at all at sea. But the only difference is you don't turn it. If you're going to go to the right, you don't turn the wheel to the right. You turn it to the left. That's the only hardest thing to get used to.
The Battleship New Jersey, is it considered an easy ship to maneuver, or was it more difficult than destroyers, cruisers, aircraft carriers, or easier?
Like I said, the Battleship New Jersey was great to steer. Because don't forget, we had a lot of weight on us, and That's about all I can
Yeah,
think
it
of.
was easy to handle.
It was easy to handle, really, at that time.
But, by the way, you didn't talk about how and why you got into the Navy. Just mention that for us, by the way. Why did you join the Navy?
I brought that up at the beginning, wasn't it the beginning?
Oh, you did? Well, that was the other tape.
Yeah.
It has to be on
Okay.
this tape, too.
Okay.
Yeah, why, how and why did you get into the Navy?
Well, like I said, I wanted to, actually, I was supposed to go back into the Army, which I had 14 to 15 days to get in. My father knew somebody who was in the Navy Department, and he got me into it. I had to go to, now I remember, Wall Street in New York, I had to go to. I got in there, took my physical there. The same day, I was shipped to Bainbridge, Maryland for my boot camp, which I spent there from August to January, which I was supposed to stay there. They asked me if I would want to stay there and play basketball. I turned that down and I said, well, I want to see the world. And they asked me what ships I wanted, and I seen the New Jersey. I was from New Jersey, and I figured I would join the fleet, joined the New Jersey at that time.
Now, how did you almost get drafted into the Army? That's an interesting story.
Well, I'll tell you, after I left school, I think I was home for about 14 or 15 days. I got a notice from Selective Service to report down to the Irvington Selective Service Board. Then they gave me, like I said, for 15 days to make up my mind. The only reason why I didn't want it, because I went to school with 11 other classmates of mine, in which 7 of them, I think, got out of Korea good, but I know 4 of them were killed in Korea.
Those are your high school classmates?
They were high school classmates.
Yeah, and which high school was that from?
That was Irvington High School.
Irvington High School. Now, did you tell me before that you had some dreams of becoming a professional basketball player that almost got you drafted in the Army?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, when I had bright ideas, I thought I was good in basketball. At that time, you didn't have to have the height like you have now. I was given a contract with the Baltimore Bullets. In between times, I was traded to St. Louis Hawks at that time. I went to their first week of practice and I tore my knee apart. After that, they just let you go and that was it. They don't pay you, they just pay you for the time you're there and that was it.
And so, did the Army now start knocking at your door at this point? Is that what happened?
Well, the Army, let's see, stop there for a minute, let me think. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I remember we finished school in May. And
which school is this place?
Irvington.
Irvington High School.
Right, and then after that, I went to Tennessee. I left Tennessee, like I said, to try and get into professional basketball. But as soon as the Selective Service found out that I wasn't going back to school, they decided they wanted me to report to the Army, which I had 15 days in which I changed my mind and I joined the Navy instead.
Okay. Now that we're on the Battleship New Jersey, let's go there. Talk to me about some of the experiences you had besides working in the navigation division. What was life like aboard the battleship for an enlisted man?
Well, actually, life aboard the New Jersey is great. The only drawback is, like I said, was the watches, but the people on there were great. The food was great. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think now. Oh, there was a lot to learn. I remember another part. There was a couple schools which they decided. Well, one was the Loran School, which we went to, which I enjoyed very much. And then another thing was that we also went to a map reading school. How to correct charts at that time. One of our principal jobs was, if we weren't on duty, and it was during the daylight hours, we would correct charge a lot of times, or, like I said, work on our, can't think of anything else.
What were the other men like aboard the ship? Was it a mixture of people from around the United States?
Oh yes, they were from all, most of the people were actually, got very friendly with Tommy Incan. He was from Staten Island at that time, which became an usher in my wedding. Then there was Frank Ramsey he was from, we start off with Tommy Incan?
All right, sure. Start off with Tommy Incan.
Yeah, Tommy Incan, me and him became very good friends aboard ship. He was from Staten Island, was from Jersey. I remember a lot of times we used to come up from Norfolk by bus. Once in a while, when we were daring, we would grab a flight from Norfolk up into Connecticut, which from Connecticut we would hitchhike a ride down. He was, like I said, he was from Staten Island. Then when it was Sunday, we would meet back a lot of times because we would take the bus back. We would go to New York, take the bus back to New York. And another one is Ramsey, Frank Ramsey. He was from Washington. And we, three of us palled around quite a bit. And then there was Worth. I can't recall his first name. But he was another one that we went. And a lot of times we would go ashore together. Any of the ports, most of the times we always tried to, we would watch out for each other as we went ashore.
What were some of the ports that you visited?
Some of the ports we visited, I could start off when we left Norfolk on my first trip, was Cuba at that time. From there we went to the Panama Canal, which was a great experience. I remember that very well because that's where I got the idea of becoming a helmsman. I watched this Ross Grimes. He was a helmsman at that time. It took us 9 hours to go through the canal, and he stood there for 9 hours. From there, then we went to California, Long Beach, and from California went to Hawaii. We spent a couple of days there. I remember a few great times we had out there in Hawaii with Tommy. In fact, one of the days we almost got back late to the ship, but we made it back okay. And then from there we went to Korea. We spent almost 9 months there, but we stood there from March when we got there until the end of the war.
And what were your then involved on the firing line off of Korea?
Yes, every morning we would have general quarters, and they would start firing, and we would send up helicopters to try and scout for the North Koreans at that time. And I remember there was one day we were there, we were trying to hit a train. We missed it the first day. We came back the next day, we tried again. The third day we finally got it. It comes out of a tunnel, and the 16s finally got it. Those 16-inch guns can really fire. And every morning we would see the Chinese and the North Koreans coming over the mountains, which we never could figure out why. But as soon as we seen them, we'd start firing.
So you could actually see them through your eyes, or did you have to have binoculars or telescopes?
Actually, we were close up to see them with our eyes coming over the mountains that day. We were only about 10 miles away. So after we did.
Over like large regiment divisions?
Large regiment, right.
And what was it like to see the enemy as you're shooting at them?
You know, we were kids at that time, you know, and it was really hard to figure why would they, as soon as we start firing, they would just keep coming and coming and coming. And then I remember one time, we were in Wonsan Harbor, this little boat, I think was about 15 or 16 feet, two North Koreans, I guess, or Chinese. They were fully loaded with dynamite aboard, and they were trying to come by us. So the first thing the captain did was call out a couple Marines, and they shot them with their rifles.
What was the attitude of the crew towards the war? Was morale high, low, average? What would you say?
Well, let me tell you, we had a great captain aboard, great admiral aboard. And another thing was, we would spend a couple days there. He would always send us back to Japan for a couple of R&Rs. In fact, we used to go to Yokosuka, Japan, Sasebo, Japan. And I remember you were entitled to 3 days of R&R and one at Mount Fujiyama at that time. The people aboard the ship were great.
Who was the captain at the time, and what was the attitude of the men towards him? Do you recall his name?
Let me look that up.
Sure, go right ahead. Okay, we're back on a question about who was the captain of the ship and what was the attitude of the men towards him. Was he an effective captain or not?
Oh yes, like I said, Captain O'Donnell was very good on us. For one thing, we never had to get up and dress blues. We rose in dungarees. And another thing was, like I said, we would spend maybe 10, 12 days at sea. And he always bring in, and then he would decide it was time for us to have a little R&R, replenish, rearm, and everything like that. We had a great navigator at that time. I can't recall his name now.
What made him a great navigator?
Trying to think. Great navigator. Oh, okay. Okay, getting back to our navigator. You want me to get his name?
Sure, go ahead. I'll shut the machine down.
Okay, our navigator at the time was Richard Burgess, and our regular officer was, well, you better cut it off again. No, these ain't he's only assistant. Okay, now I see the red light.
Sure.
Okay, one of the good things about him being a good navigator, if we ran into a problems, like even with our chart work, even with Loran, he would always try to help us out. That was one good thing about him. And if, like I said, he never really pushed us into doing anything that we really didn't want to do. Like if we didn't want to, I'm trying to think now. Some of the things he didn't want us to do.
You mentioned some men, for example, did not want to become helmsmen. So he wouldn't force anybody to do that?
Oh, no, he wouldn't. Well, the reason why, actually, getting back to the helmsman part, the only time we really, like I said, we did steer was when it was in critical times, like at the beginning I said, you know, when we were replenishing, when we were doing a highline transfer, we're taking on ammunition. But he would, a lot of times he would be in a conning tower with us, which made him, we really respected him a lot for that.
Any other experiences that you recall from the ship? What was it men's attitudes towards the war? There's a war going on. How did the men feel about it? Do you recall?
Actually, you know, the men really didn't complain about it, because one good thing about it, we were about 10 or 15 miles out at sea. And we knew that they couldn't reach us. But they tried to fire a couple 5-inch shells at us, which they could never. But the attitude of the crew was good.
Now, you mentioned that you were on the basketball team aboard the Battleship New Jersey. And talk a little bit about that, and you have some photographs to show us also.
Okay. Yes, I joined the basketball team when I was aboard. Here's some of my players which I played with at that time. And this is just
hold that again. You have to
Okay.
hold it for 10 or 15 seconds.
All right.
So, and I'm going to focus in on that. Okay. So you can continue talking.
Okay, these are some of the players that we had. The only drawback about it was we had no place to practice, really, and which was hard. And a lot of times we would pull into a port, we would play all other different teams. Like when we went to the Mediterranean, we would play in Valencia, Spain. We played in England, Weymouth, England at that time. And which were, like I said, we never had really that much of a practice. And here's another picture of me when I was playing at that time. The only bad thing for us in navigation was that we didn't have the time, because most of the times we were on duty, or else if we weren't on duty, you know what it is, we wanted our liberty at that time. But even though we enjoyed it, and
Talk to me a little bit. How did you practice aboard the ship? Did you run drills on the deck, or what did you do?
no, we had no practice at all. There was no practice at all aboard ship, because once you're at sea, you can't. Because there was no basket. No, that just sounded like a cruise ship where you could shoot, you know, really. But no, we had no practice at all. The only thing we relied on is our experiences that we had before we joined the Navy.
Had most of the men on the team been in college or high school basketball teams before?
Most of them were all high school kids. I think we had one man that was in Q division, or in He played a couple of years in college ball, but that's all. We were mostly all too young, really, to.
Now, I noticed on the team there's one African-American player, and we know in 1948 Harry Truman went ahead and integrated the military. What was the relationship between white, blacks on the ship at the time? Do you recall?
Oh yeah. He was very good. He was, in fact, he was in the medical department, which he was great. And I remember him specifically. He's the one that talked me into joining the basketball team, because he said he had heard that I played basketball in high school and I played college ball. But I told him, I said, it would be difficult. I said, I don't get the hours or the time like you people do.
So what did you do did you practice for the team? Did you do any exercises, sit-ups, push-ups, or just
nothing?
Suited up and played when you were short?
Just that's it. We just wanted to show. If we were in Norfolk or something like that, we would have a few days of practice.
How good was the team?
We didn't have too good of a team. No good.
Which team was one of the better ones at that time in the fleet? Do you recall?
I remember we played the Wisconsin and the Iowa, but they beat us both times. I remember that.
So when you're a losing team, how did the men receive you back on the ship? Was there much interest in basketball or no?
At that time, everything was, they were just for themselves, really. Because you know what it was? You're at sea, and they wanted to get back home. And a lot of these kids were young yet. A lot of them were married at that time. They wanted to go see their wife. In fact, a couple of guys on the team were married. And if we had a game, sometimes we were short.
So you might play with 4 men instead of 5?
No, we had to play with 5. We had to play with 5. We could start with 5, and then we could work down to 4.
Talk to me a little bit. The Marines used to serve aboard the battleship at this point. What was the relationship between the Marines and the Navy personnel? Did you get along well? Did you cooperate? Was there any competition, friction?
Okay, getting along with the Marines, they were very good aboard ship to us. But one of the reasons why there was always a Marine on the 04 level with us that would be with whoever was the lieutenant that was in charge at that time. We would have them, if they were going on Liberty, we would have one Marine in the after part of the ship and one Marine in the front part of the ship. So we got along with them very, very well. I think we were about the only ones that really, because a lot of times when they're at sea with us, first thing they would ask for is their coffee.
They wanted their Navy coffee.
Right.
How about the rest of the crew? What was an average day for you like on the ship? A 24-hour day when you're at sea, say off the coast of Korea. What happened at 24 hours?
Okay, let's see. We hit the bomb lines roughly around dawn, around 6 o'clock. We would go to general quarters. And then from that time on, we would be firing. It all depends where the helicopters found the enemy at that time. If they found them, they would radio back, and we would try and, hit them where they. But we knew every morning that they would start coming over the mountains.
And this would be off the coast of Wonsan at the time?
Wonsan, Pusan, Songjin.
So you do the general quarters at dusk, and then what happens the rest of the day on the ship?
Actually, after we would spend roughly 6 hours on the bomb lines most of the time. After that, it was back to the regular routine, your regular watch. During general quarters, we would have a helmsman at that time. We would have people in after steering. We would have people that would be on the phones during general quarters. As soon as we left the bomb lines, after that, it would be the regular, like the deckhands would they would come up and start steering the ship at that time. The only thing that we kept was the log, which we had to take the weather, the temperature, the barometer, and any other, like the clouds, how's the sea. And that we had to read every hour.
And then the rest, how much time would you have for eating at that point? An hour, half hour? Did you eat on the run when you were off the coast of Korea?
Oh, at that time, no. We would send somebody down, and they would come up like with a box lunch. We would have lunches upstairs, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. How was the food?
Food was great, even at that time, even during the wartime.
Now, is there anything else I should be asking you about the battleship that I haven't that you think is important to tell us for the historical record?
The only thing I still remember, I still think if my figures are correct, we're supposed to be 1/4 of a foot bigger than any other ship. I can't recall, but I know I read that somewhere. And another thing is that I think we're the only battleship that actually went to all the wars. We started out World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Beirut War. And I remember how many times she was put back into mothballs. After I got out, I think 2 months later, she was put back into Bayonne. As soon as the Vietnam War came, she came back out again. After the Vietnam War, she went back into Bayonne. And she came back out again.
How does then the battleship, you're looking back on it years later, your experiences aboard it, how did those experiences affect your later life?
Now, one of the good things about that is it really taught you how to grow up, really, the most important thing for me, I think. And, you know, when I was a kid in the service, you know, you're wild. I know as soon as I got out, I knew it was time for me to slow down, you know, and get on with my life. I only got married, like I said. I got 3 kids, which are great, and 5 grandchildren.
So the ship sort of helped you settle down a bit, would you say?
Yes, they really helped me settle down, right.
Did you sense when you got out of the military that you were more mature than people who had not gone in the military? Did you sense that when you left the military after your 4 years of duty was up, were you more mature, do you think, than men who had not gone in the military?
Oh, yes. You really become a man out there. For one thing, in the Navy is another thing, that you really had to take care of yourself. You really had to, you had to grow up fast, because, you know, you had to really be in ship shape. You had to, actually, you know, at that time, we all had that long hair bit. No, you know, when we came out of the Navy, you didn't see too much of that. Because we weren't allowed to have that in the Navy. Everything was a crew cut when we got in, and mostly we kept that.
Would you have done it over again, got in the service, if you were young?
If I was young again, I think I would have. I would have stayed back in again, you know, because, you know, after 19 years, you can retire. And if I would, like I said, I joined the Navy when I was 19. I could have gotten out at 39, and I still could have gotten a place of employment. And you don't know how far up I could have went in rank. I know I already passed the second class to be a second-class petty officer, but I had to re-enlist to get it.
And you chose not to re-enlist, right?
No, I chose not to re-enlist, right.
Now, we're sort of winding up this interview. Is there anything else that you want to say that, for the record, that anything else that you think is important to leave behind for historians to hear about or understand concerning the Battleship New Jersey?
No, I can't think of really that much.
Good. Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's about it, really.
Okay. So today I've been talking with Mr. Arnold Kobernick, who served aboard the Battleship New Jersey from January 1953 to August 1956.
Right.
Right. And as a seaman first class, almost second class if he...
No, third class.
Third class.
Quartermaster third class.
Quartermaster third class. I'm sorry,
right.
Quartermaster third class.
Right.
Who could have moved up in promotion if he decided to re-up for another tour of duty. Mr. Kobernick, thank you very much for the interview. Today is May 19th. The year 2005. My name is Dr. Tom Bennett from King University. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Couldn't think of everything.